You are listening to the best audio story of 2026. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and watch until the end so you don't miss the ending that will leave everyone stunned. A wife checked the doorbell camera and saw her husband leaving her mother's house at midnight. Emily Parker installed the doorbell camera to protect her mother. That was what made the footage feel so cruel later. It had been her idea after Margaret Reed slipped on the front porch steps in early March. It was not a serious fall, not the kind that required surgery or weeks in the hospital, but it scared Emily enough to change things. Her mother had laughed it off, insisting she had only bruised her hip and her pride. "I'm not 80, Margaret said from the couch, one leg propped on a pillow. "You're also not invincible," Emily replied. Margaret gave her a look. "I raised you. That should count as evidence of endurance." Emily had tried not to smile. Margaret had always been like that, elegant, sharp, impossible to fuss over without resistance. She lived in a quiet suburb outside Nashville with her husband Robert, Emily's stepfather. Robert traveled often for consulting work, and though Margaret was perfectly capable of living alone for a few days, Emily worried. So she bought the camera. Daniel, Emily's husband, installed it. He stood on Margaret's porch in a grey t-shirt, sleeves pushed up, while Emily handed him screws from the little plastic tray. "Angle it down a bit," Emily said. Daniel adjusted the camera. "Like this? A little more." Margaret stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "I feel like I'm being placed under surveillance." Daniel grinned. "Only if you start sneaking out after curfew, Mom." Margaret rolled her eyes, but she smiled. Daniel had called her Mom for years. At first, it had been a joke. Daniel came from a fractured family, cold and distant, with parents who spoke to him mostly on birthdays and holidays. Margaret had welcomed him warmly from the beginning. She remembered his favorite meals, asked about his work, saved him the last slice of pie, and treated him like the son she never had. Emily had loved that. She had been proud that Daniel felt safe with her family. When he finished installing the camera, he stepped down from the ladder and wiped his hands. "There," he said. "Now you can sleep better, knowing your mom is safe." Emily kissed his cheek. "Thank you." He smiled. At the time, she thought it was a small act of love. Months later, that same camera would show her Daniel leaving Margaret's house at 12:17 a.m., adjusting his shirt, looking over his shoulder like a man afraid of being seen. And Emily would understand that some things installed for protection become witnesses instead. The alert came on a Thursday night. Emily woke to her phone vibrating on the nightstand. At first, she thought it was her alarm. Then, she saw the time. 12:17 a.m. A notification glowed on the screen. Motion detected at Margaret Reed's front door. Emily was instantly awake. Her mother had been better since the fall, but Emily still checked alerts quickly. Usually it was a delivery, a neighborhood cat, wind-blown leaves, or Margaret stepping outside to water plants at unreasonable hours. Daniel's side of the bed was empty. Emily noticed that second. She frowned. He had said he needed to finish work at the office. That was not unusual lately. His real estate business had been unstable for months, and he often came home after midnight, exhausted and withdrawn. Still half asleep, Emily opened the camera app. The video loaded slowly. First, the porch appeared empty under the yellow porch light. The image flickered from rain misting across the lens. Margaret's white rocking chair sat near the railing. Her hanging fern swayed. Then the door opened. Daniel stepped out. Emily's body went completely still. He wore the same dark jacket he had left home in, but his hair was slightly messy and his shirt collar was uneven. He paused on the porch, turned back toward the doorway, and said something the camera did not capture clearly. Margaret appeared behind him. She was wearing a robe, not the quilted robe she wore when answering the door for deliveries, the pale silk one Emily had given her for Christmas. Daniel looked toward the street, then leaned closer to the doorway. Margaret reached out and touched his arm. The clip ended. Emily stared at the screen. Her first thought was absurdly practical. Maybe Mom had an emergency. Then why had no one called her? Maybe Daniel stopped by after work to check on her. Then why had he not told her? Maybe Margaret heard a noise and called him. Then why was she in a silk robe at the door, touching his arm like that? Emily replayed the clip. Daniel stepped out, adjusted his shirt, looked toward the street. Margaret in the doorway, hand on his arm. The timestamp remained unchanged. 12:18 a.m. Emily looked toward Daniel's empty side of the bed. The sheets were cold. She called him. No answer. She texted. "Where are you?" 3 minutes passed. Then, "Daniel, still at the office. Wrapping up now, sorry." Be home soon. Emily read the message twice, then looked at the frozen image on her phone. Her husband had just walked out of her mother's house, and he had lied. A cold, clean fear moved through her. Not proof yet, but something worse than suspicion. A beginning. Emily did not confront him when he came home. That surprised her. She had imagined herself as the kind of woman who would explode if betrayed. She thought she would throw a phone, demand answers, wake the entire house with anger. But when Daniel entered at 12:56 a.m., moving quietly through the kitchen, Emily remained in bed with her eyes open. He stepped into the bedroom and froze when he saw she was awake. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey. Couldn't sleep?" "No." He removed his jacket and placed it over the chair. "Long night. At the office?" He paused for half a second. "Yeah." Emily looked at his face in the darkness. She had known that face for 7 years. She had kissed it, trusted it, watched it sleep, watched it laugh across her mother's dinner table. Now she studied it like evidence. "What were you finishing?" she asked. "A contract revision." His voice was calm. "To come?" She nodded. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just tired." He went into the bathroom. Emily listened to the shower turn on. Then she picked up her phone again and saved the footage. She sent a copy to her email. Then she lay back down and stared at the ceiling. Daniel returned from the shower smelling like soap, but underneath it, she thought she smelled Margaret's lavender detergent. That was impossible, she told herself. Or maybe not. He lay beside her and reached for her waist. Emily moved slightly away. He withdrew his hand. Neither spoke. The house remained quiet, but inside Emily, something had begun making a sound. A slow crack. Emily's marriage had been strained long before the camera alert. Not broken. Not obviously. Just strained. Daniel had always been charming in quiet ways. He remembered small things. He filled Emily's car with gas without mentioning it. He bought her favorite cinnamon tea when she was stressed. He once drove 40 minutes in the rain to retrieve a folder she had forgotten before an important donor meeting. But the past year had changed them. Emily worked as an event director for a nonprofit. Her job had become more demanding after the organization expanded. Daniel's business was struggling after a development project collapsed. He felt ashamed of money problems and hid that shame under irritability. Emily felt alone carrying the household. Daniel felt criticized for failing. They did not scream. Their fights were neat, controlled, and damaging. "You talk to me like I'm another problem to solve," Daniel said one night. Emily stood at the kitchen counter, laptop open, bills spread beside her. "I'm trying to keep us from drowning." "I know." "Then why do you make me feel guilty for being responsible?" "Because sometimes I don't need a manager, Emily. I need a wife." The words hurt because there was truth inside them. She had been tired, sharp, practical, less tender than she wanted to be. But Daniel had also become unreachable. When she asked how he felt, he shrugged. When she asked what he needed, he said, "Nothing." When she reached for him, he often seemed elsewhere. One Sunday after dinner at Margaret's house, Daniel stayed behind to help her fix a loose cabinet hinge while Emily and Robert washed dishes. Emily remembered looking through the kitchen doorway and seeing Daniel laugh at something Margaret said. Not polite laughter, real laughter, easy and relaxed. She had felt a brief stab of jealousy. Not romantic jealousy then. Something smaller. Why did he seem lighter with her mother than with her? Later, in the car, Emily said, "You and Mom seem close lately." Daniel glanced over. "She's easy to talk to." "And I'm not?" He sighed. "Emily, don't do that." "Do what?" "Turn everything into proof that I'm accusing you." She looked out the window. "I was just asking." But she had not been just asking. Something had felt wrong. She had buried it because suspecting Daniel was painful and suspecting her mother was unthinkable. The morning after the footage, Emily watched Daniel behave normally. He made coffee. He kissed her cheek. He asked if she had seen his black belt. She answered without mentioning the camera. At 9:30, after he left for work, Emily drove to Margaret's house. Margaret opened the door wearing jeans and a cardigan, hair pinned neatly back. "Emily?" she said, surprised. "I didn't know you were coming." Emily smiled carefully. "I wanted to check on you. How sweet. Come in." The house smelled like lemon polish and coffee. Emily had grown up in that house after Margaret married Robert. It was where she had cried after breakups, celebrated birthdays, planned her wedding, and brought Daniel for the first time. It had always felt like safety. Now she noticed details differently. Daniel's favorite mug sat in the drying rack. A man's dark umbrella, leaned near the back door. The guest bathroom hand towel was damp. Emily hated herself for noticing. "How did you sleep?" she asked. Margaret poured coffee. "Fine." "Why?" "The doorbell camera sent an alert last night." Margaret's hand paused over the cup, only for a second, but Emily saw it. "Oh?" "A to isprezece. Shapt isprezece." Margaret set the coffee pot down carefully. "Probably a raccoon. They've been terrible lately." Emily looked at her mother. "Was Daniel here?" Margaret's face shifted. Not dramatically. Margaret was too controlled for that. But something tightened around her eyes. "Daniel?" Emily nodded. Margaret turned toward the sink. "He stopped by briefly." "Briefly?" "I heard a noise outside and got nervous. Robert was out of town. Daniel was nearby, so I called him." Emily felt the lie foaming in real time. "Nearby where?" "I don't know, sweetheart. The office, maybe. His office is 25 minutes from here." Margaret dried her hands on a towel. "He was kind enough to come. At midnight. I was frightened." Emily nodded slowly. "Why didn't you call me?" Margaret looked at her. "I didn't want to worry you." The sentence should have sounded loving. Instead, it sounded prepared. Emily placed her coffee cup down untouched. "Did he stay long?" Margaret's lips pressed together. "Not long." Emily smiled faintly. "Good." She left after 10 minutes. In the car, she opened the camera app and checked the full timeline. Daniel entered Margaret's house at 10:31 p.m. He left at 12:17 a.m. 1 hour and 46 minutes. Not long, Margaret had said. Emily sat in the driveway, gripping the steering wheel. Her mother had lied too. The next 2 days became an investigation Emily never wanted to conduct. She checked all the doorbell clips. At first, she found normal things. Margaret bringing in groceries, Robert leaving for trips, delivery drivers, neighbors dropping off mail. Then Daniel appeared. A week earlier, at 11:08 p.m., he arrived with no tools, no bag, no visible reason. Margaret opened the door before he rang. He left at 12:02 a.m. 2 weeks earlier at 9:44 p.m. Robert was out of town that week. Daniel parked down the street. The camera caught only him walking up from the sidewalk. Margaret opened the door wearing the same silk robe. He left after midnight. A month earlier, during an afternoon visit, Margaret touched Daniel's face in the doorway before he left. Emily watched that clip 4 times. Each time, her mind tried to explain it. A motherly gesture, a comforting touch, something innocent seen through suspicious eyes. But Daniel's face in the clip betrayed him. He leaned into the touch, then looked toward the street before stepping away. Not innocent, not family. Emily checked phone records. Daniel and Margaret had spoken often. Late calls, short daytime calls, calls after Emily and Daniel argued. Then she remembered the old tablet Daniel used for recipes and work files. It still synced some messages. She found Margaret saved under a fake contact, M.R. Garden. Most messages had been deleted. Enough remained. Margaret, you shouldn't come after midnight again. The camera almost caught everything. Daniel, I parked down the street. Emily won't check unless there's an alert. Emily covered her mouth. She scrolled. Daniel, I hate lying to her. Margaret, so do I. But I hate being without you more. Another. Margaret, I hate that your wife trusts us both. Emily dropped the tablet onto the couch. Your wife, not my daughter. Your wife. She walked to the bathroom and locked the door. For several minutes, she sat on the floor, shaking. The footage was not misunderstood. The messages were not innocent. Daniel and Margaret had known exactly what they were hiding, and they had counted on Emily's trust to hide it. Emily confronted Daniel first. It happened that evening in their kitchen. He came home around 7, loosened his tie, and gave her a tired smile. Hey. Emily stood by the island with her phone in her hand. We need to talk. He stopped. Something in her voice must have warned him. Okay. She placed the phone on the counter and pressed play. The 12:17 a.m. clip began. Daniel watched himself step out of Margaret's house. His face drained of color. The clip ended. Emily said nothing. Daniel swallowed. Your mom called me because she heard a noise. Emily pressed play on the next clip. Daniel arriving 2 weeks earlier. Margaret opening the door. The timestamp. 9:44 p.m. She played another. Daniel leaving after midnight. Another. Margaret touching his face. Daniel looked away. Emily's voice was calm. That's the thing about cameras. They don't get tired of the lie. Emily. She opened the printed messages and placed them beside the phone. You shouldn't come after midnight again. The camera almost caught everything. Daniel sat down slowly. Emily watched him. Still a noise outside? He covered his face. I'm sorry. The words came too quickly. Too small. Emily gripped the counter. Do not start with sorry. He looked up, eyes wet. I never meant for it to happen. That sentence insults every choice you made after the first one. He flinched. How long? She asked. He closed his eyes. 3 months. The room seemed to tilt. Physical? His silence answered. Emily looked toward the sink, breathing carefully. Say it. Emily, say it. Yes. The word landed like a stone. Her husband and her mother. 3 months. Her mother's house. Her mother's doorway. Her mother's robe. Emily felt something inside her separate from the woman standing in the kitchen. One part of her wanted to collapse. Another wanted facts. Why? Daniel cried silently. I was lonely. Emily laughed once. It was a sharp, broken sound. We were married. Lonely was supposed to bring you to me. Retreat. No. You retreated. Then you went to my mother. He lowered his head. She listened. She made me feel like I wasn't failing. Emily's voice shook now. Loneliness could have been a conversation. Betrayal was a choice. Daniel nodded, crying. I know. No, Emily said. You know you were caught. He had no answer. She picked up the phone and showed him the footage again, paused on his face as he left Margaret's house. My family opened the door for you, she said. And you learned how to sneak through it after dark. Daniel put his face in his hands. Emily stepped back. I want you to pack a bag. He looked up. Tonight? Now. Can we please talk first? We are talking. I know what you mean. You want enough time to make your betrayal sound more complicated than the footage. He went silent. Emily's voice softened, and somehow that made it worse. You were my husband, Daniel. She was my mother. I should never have had to use a camera to learn the truth about either of you. He stood slowly. I'll go. She watched him pack. When he left, he paused at the door. I am sorry. Emily looked at him. I believe you. Hope flickered in his face. Then she added, that does not make you safe. He left without another word. The confrontation with Margaret happened the next morning. Emily did not go alone. She called Robert first. He was in Knoxville for work. Emily? He answered. Everything okay? She closed her eyes. No. There was a pause. What happened? Robert, I need you to come home. Is your mother hurt? Emily swallowed. Yes, but not the way you mean. He was silent, then said, I'm leaving now. 3 hours later, Robert arrived at Margaret's house. Emily was already parked outside, waiting in her car. Robert looked older than usual as he got out of his truck. Kind, tired Robert, who had married Margaret when Emily was 16 and never tried to replace her father, but became family through patience. What is this? He asked. Emily held up her phone. You need to see it inside. His face changed. He nodded. Margaret opened the door and looked from Emily to Robert. What's going on? Emily walked past her into the kitchen. This kitchen had once been Emily's refuge. She had done homework at this table, cried over college rejection letters here, tasted Margaret's soup when sick, brought Daniel to this room for the first time. Now she placed her phone in the center of the table. Sit down, Emily said. Margaret stared at her. Emily, sit down. Margaret sat. Robert remained standing. Emily pressed play. Daniel leaving at 12:17 a.m. The timestamp glowing. Margaret in the doorway. Her hand on his arm. Robert watched without moving. When the clip ended, no one spoke. Emily played the earlier clips. Daniel arriving late. Leaving late. Parking down the street. Margaret touching his face. Then Emily placed the printed messages on the table. Robert picked one up. His hands shook. The camera almost caught everything. He looked at Margaret. What did it almost catch? Margaret began crying. Robert's voice dropped. Maggie. She covered her face. Emily looked at her mother. I installed that camera because I wanted to protect you. I never imagined it would show me you helping destroy my marriage. Margaret sobbed. I'm sorry. Emily's voice hardened. You don't get to start there. Margaret lowered her hands. Emily asked, How long? Margaret whispered, 3 months. Robert stepped back, as if struck. With Daniel? He asked, though everyone knew. Margaret nodded. Robert sat down heavily. He looked at Emily. I'm sorry. Emily's eyes filled. You didn't do this. He looked at the phone again. That camera was supposed to keep strangers away, he said quietly. It never occurred to me the danger would be someone we invited to dinner. Margaret reached toward him. Robert, please. He pulled away. No. Emily turned to her mother. You were supposed to be the woman I ran to when my marriage hurt me. Instead, your house became the place where it was destroyed. Margaret cried harder. I was lonely. Emily's face twisted. Everyone keeps saying that like loneliness is a weapon pointed at other people. Margaret shook her head. I know it's not an excuse. Then don't use it like one. Margaret fell silent. Emily continued. Being my mother should have made my home safer. Instead, you made your house the place where my marriage died. Margaret bowed her head. Robert stood abruptly. I can't be here. Margaret looked up. Robert. He turned to her with a grief so deep it frightened Emily. I shared a bed with you while you were opening our door to him after midnight. Margaret sobbed. Robert picked up his keys. I need air. He left. Margaret looked at Emily desperately. Please don't hate me. Emily stared at her mother. I wish I could. Margaret flinched. Hating you would be easier than loving the mother who did this. Then Emily walked out. The family collapsed quietly. There was no public scandal, no dramatic announcement to relatives, no shouting in the street, just absence. Daniel moved into a short-term apartment. Robert stayed with his brother. Margaret remained in the house, with a doorbell camera still above the porch, now useless as protection because the danger had never been outside. Emily stayed in her own house for a week, barely sleeping. The saved footage lived on her phone. She watched it too often at first. Daniel stepping out. Margaret in the doorway. The timestamp. 12:11 a.m. Every replay heard. Every replay also reminded her she was not imagining things. Betrayal does that. It makes the truth feel unreal, even after proof appears. Evidence becomes an anchor. Daniel wrote a letter after 10 days. Emily left it unopened for 3 more. When she finally read it, she sat on the kitchen floor. Emily, I have no excuse. I have reasons, but they do not protect me from responsibility. I felt like a failure in our marriage. Your mother made me feel admired when I felt small. I chose that feeling over my vows, over your trust, over the family that welcomed me. I did not just betray you with another woman. I crossed into your family and made your mother part of the wound. I am sorry. I will not fight you for peace. Emily folded the letter. She did not cry. Maybe she was too tired. Margaret's letter arrived a week later. My daughter? Emily almost stopped there. The phrase felt like theft, but she continued. I became the woman I taught you to protect yourself from. I confused loneliness and vanity with love. Daniel's attention made me feel wanted at a time when I felt invisible, and I let that matter more than being your mother. There is no excuse. I am sorry, not because I lost you, but because I hurt you. Emily placed the letter beside Daniel's. 2 apologies, both perhaps sincere, neither large enough. Robert called that night. Did she write you? He asked. Yes. Me too. Did you read it? Yes. And? Robert was quiet. I believe she's sorry. Emily closed her eyes. Me too. That doesn't mean I can go back. I know. They said nothing for a while. Then Robert said, You know you didn't cause this? Emily's throat tightened. Do we? You should. I keep thinking if Daniel and I had been better. No, Robert said firmly. Marriage problems are not permission slips. Emily began to cry. Robert stayed on the phone until she stopped. Therapy became Emily's new weekly appointment. At first, she hated saying the sentence. My husband had an affair with my mother. It sounded impossible every time. Her therapist, Dr. Lane, did not flinch. That helped. What hurts most today? Dr. Lane asked during the 3rd session. Emily laughed weakly. Only one thing? Start anyway. Emily looked at her hands. The camera. What about it? I installed it to protect her. Your mother? Emily nodded. Daniel helped me install it. He stood on her porch and told me I could sleep better, knowing she was safe. Her voice broke. And then it showed me him leaving her house. Dr. Lane let the silence sit. Emily wiped her eyes. I feel stupid. For trusting them? Yes. You trusted your husband and your mother. Those are people who should have been safe. Emily cried harder then, because that was it. She had not ignored strangers. She had trusted the 2 people closest to the center of her life. Dr. Lane said, The shame belongs to Daniel and Margaret. Emily repeated it quietly. The shame belongs to Daniel and Margaret. At first, it sounded like homework. Later, it became survival. When she replayed the signs she missed, she repeated it. When she remembered Margaret defending Daniel too quickly, she repeated it. When she remembered Daniel saying he was working late, she repeated it. When she woke at 12:17 a.m. from dreams of the porch camera, she repeated it. The shame belongs to them, not me. Months passed. Emily filed for divorce. Daniel did not fight it. He signed what needed to be signed, divided assets fairly, and moved out of her life with less resistance than she expected. That did not make him noble. It simply meant he did not add more cruelty. Robert separated from Margaret. He tried counseling with her for a few months, then moved forward with divorce. He told Emily he could believe Margaret regretted it and still refused to share a life with her. Love doesn't always mean access, he said. Emily wrote that down too. Love doesn't always mean access. She still loved her mother. That was the hardest part. If Margaret had become a monster entirely, Emily could have hated her cleanly. But Margaret was still the woman who held her during childhood fevers, taught her to drive, cried at her wedding, and remembered every detail of her life. The betrayal did not erase love. It made love unsafe. So Emily built boundaries. She blocked Margaret's calls for a while, then unblocked her but did not answer. Margaret sent letters. Emily read some, ignored others. Daniel asked once to meet. Emily agreed. After the divorce was nearly final, they met in a park because she did not want coffee, food, or a table between them. Tables had become complicated. Daniel looked thinner. I ended all contact with Margaret, he said. Emily looked at the walking path. That should have happened before it began. I know. Do you? He nodded. I know enough to understand that knowing will never equal what you feel. That answer surprised her. It was not an excuse, he continued. I confused being admired with being loved. I felt like a failure, and your mother made me feel wanted. That is ugly, but it's true. Emily looked at him. Was it worth it? His face crumpled. No. Then why? Because selfishness doesn't calculate cost until after it spends everything. She looked away before tears could fall. Do you know what I remember most? She asked. The footage? Yes, but not just that. I remember you installing the camera. I remember you telling me it would help me sleep because Mom would be safe. Daniel closed his eyes. I know. No, Emily said. You are beginning to know. He nodded, crying silently. Is there any chance someday? No. The word was quiet but final. I may forgive you one day, she said. But I cannot return to a marriage where I needed a camera to learn the truth about my husband and my mother. He accepted it. There was nothing else he could do. Emily met Margaret much later, almost 2 years after the footage. They met in a public garden, not Margaret's house. Emily could not yet stand on that porch without seeing Daniel leaving under the yellow light. Margaret looked older, still elegant, but smaller somehow. No jewelry, no lipstick, no bright confidence. She stood when Emily approached. Thank you for coming. Emily sat on the bench, leaving space between them. For a while, neither spoke. Then Emily said, Tell me the truth, without making yourself sound tragic. Margaret closed her eyes. It was wine. Emily had expected loneliness. She did not expect that. Margaret continued. I was aging. Robert was recovering. I felt more like a nurse and hostess than a woman. Daniel admired me, needed me, desired me. I let that feeling become more important than being your mother. Emily's throat tightened. At least that sounds honest. It is. Did you love him? Margaret shook her head, tears slipping down her face. No. I loved how I felt when he wanted me. That is worse, I think. It is. Margaret accepted it. Emily looked toward the flowers along the path. I installed that camera because I was afraid something would happen to you. Margaret covered her mouth. And instead, it showed me that something had happened to us. Margaret sobbed. I know. You keep saying that. I don't know what else to say. Emily turned back to her. Say this. Being my mother should have stopped you. Margaret's face crumpled. Being your mother should have stopped me. Emily nodded. That was the sentence she had needed. Not enough, but necessary. She stood. I may forgive you someday, but you will never be my safest place again. Margaret cried silently. I understand. You accept it, Emily said. Understanding may come later. Then she left. She cried in the car afterward. But she did not feel trapped anymore. Some conversations do not repair the relationship. They return your voice to you. Years later, Emily visited Robert at his new apartment. It was smaller than the house he had shared with Margaret, but warm. Bookshelves, mismatched mugs, framed photos of people who had stayed. Emily's photo sat on the mantel beside one of Robert's late brother. He had remained family, not by law, by choice. They made pasta together and argued about sauce. After dinner, Robert said, Do you still have the footage? Emily looked down. Yes. Do you watch it? Not anymore. Do you want to keep it? Emily thought about that. At first, the video had been proof, then punishment, then a wound she carried in her pocket. Now she did not need it to know what was true. She opened the camera app. Saved clips. There it was. Margaret Reed's front door, 12:17 a.m. Her thumb hovered. Robert sat quietly beside her. Emily opened the clip one last time. Daniel stepped out. Margaret appeared. The timestamp glowed. Emily felt pain, but not panic. That was new. She closed the clip, then deleted it. The app asked, "Are you sure?" Emily tapped yes. The video disappeared. She did not delete the truth, only the image. Robert reached over and squeezed her hand. "Good," he said. Emily exhaled. Yes. That night, driving home, she passed Margaret's old neighborhood. She did not turn in. Margaret had sold the house a year earlier. The porch, the rocking chair, the camera all belonged to someone else now. For a long time, Emily had thought that house would always be the place where her marriage died. Now it was just a house. That too was healing. The next Sunday, Emily hosted dinner in her own home. No grand table, no speeches, no perfect family performance. Just Robert, two close friends, a neighbor who brought salad, and Emily's small round kitchen table. They ate pasta and garlic bread. They laughed. Robert raised his glass and said, "To no doorbell alerts." Everyone looked confused except Emily. She laughed so hard she nearly cried. Robert smiled. It was not that the past had become funny. It was that Emily had survived long enough to laugh near it. After everyone left, Emily stood in her doorway for a moment, looking out at the quiet porch. She had installed her own camera months earlier, not because she was afraid, because packages still got stolen, and life remained practical even after heartbreak. The little blue light blinked. A camera could show truth, but it could not choose loyalty. Only people could do that. Some cameras are installed to protect a home from strangers, but sometimes they reveal the danger already welcomed inside. When a husband and a mother turn family trust into a hiding place, the footage does more than expose a secret. It shows the exact moment a daughter realizes her safest people were the ones she needed protection from. Emily had lived that moment at 12:17 a.m. She had watched the clip that split her life into before and after. But after did not mean empty. After meant truth. After meant boundaries. After meant Robert still coming to dinner. After meant laughter returning slowly. After meant understanding that trusting Daniel and Margaret had not made her foolish. It had made their betrayal deeper. The shame belonged to them. The healing belonged to her. Emily closed the door, locked it, and turned off the porch light. Her phone remained quiet on the kitchen counter. No alerts. No hidden messages. No midnight proof waiting to break her. Only silence. And this time, silence felt safe.